Hello and welcome to our coverage of the World Economic Forum in Davos. I'm Markus Karlsson. Russia is playing a big part here this year. Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev is one of the political headliners, and the country is also in the spotlight as the current holder of the G20 Presidency. But just as there's interest in Russia, I suppose it's also fair to say that there's some skepticism. The country's image as an investment destination is still being weighed down by concerns of corruption and red tape. To talk more about this now, I'm joined by Kirill Dmitriev. He's the head of the Russian Direct Investment Fund.
Hello, Marcus.
This wealth fund was set up by the Russian government in 2011, and it's currently worth around $10 billion. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Let me first ask you, you're on a Russian charm offensive here in Davos to attract investors to your country. What kind of welcome or what kind of reception have you been getting?
Well, I think when people hear the numbers of the Russian growth, then they're very impressed. Everybody agrees that the perception of Russia is much worse than the actual economy and the actual investment opportunities. So when we mentioned that Russian economy tripled, Russian middle class tripled in the last 5 years, when we talk about the fact that Russia will grow from $2 trillion economy to a $3 trillion economy, that its debt to GDP is 11%, people really start to pay attention. Because investors are really looking for growth opportunities right now. Very few markets can offer the growth opportunities that Russia provides, and we actually are on this Russian offense where we basically want to talk that Russia equals growth. And in today's world, that's very important.
What kind of investors are eyeing up Russia and the Russian market at the moment? Where are they from?
Well, we are focused on sovereign wealth funds, strategic investors, private equity firms, and each of them have their own different agenda and interest. Earlier this year, we signed up a deal with a Chinese Investment Corporation, and we formed a Russia-China fund. We had Kuwait Investment Authority co-invest in all of our deals. So Kuwait will be a 5% participant of all of the deals that we do. And we also brought some private equity investors in such sectors as healthcare and other sectors such as Russian financial sector and cinemas. So people really want to invest in two kinds of sectors in Russia. It's sectors that grow from the growing middle class, and also infrastructure investments, because Russian infrastructure needs to grow and needs to be updated.
There is still this image, though, of Russia being a very difficult place to do business in. Are you getting tired of hearing that all the time?
Well, I think we want to show some very practical examples where people can make very good returns in Russia. EBRD has come out with very interesting research this year that basically shows that private equity returns in Russia are much higher than in any other market. So I think we want to not just tell people different stories, but actually showcase them specific successful investment examples. And I was just at a breakfast where we discussed different scenarios for growth for Russia. And the scenarios that people believe is possible is a green scenario, the scenario of growth. And we had people from PepsiCo, from Heineken, from a bunch of other companies, Yandex, which is a fast-growing Russian company. So many people believe that Russia is poised for growth, and actually working with Europe and co-investing with France and other markets is actually a very good thing to spur growth in Europe as well, because expanding to Russia is a good opportunity.
Let me just play devil's advocate for a moment. The World Economic Forum has just issued a report on Russia. In that report, the forum says, though, that Russia seems to be making very little progress when it comes to the corruption issue. What do you say about that? There are still a lot of concerns out there, no?
Yeah, well, definitely. And Russian government is focused on addressing those. So corruption and bureaucracy are two key concerns. And as you may know, there is a major anti-corruption campaign going on in Russia right now. There are many deals that are being investigated. And Russian government clearly understands that corruption is a big problem. It needs to be solved for Russia to move forward. And also Russian government has taken major steps through what's called strategic maps on 22 different industries to really decrease red tape. So we are talking about decreasing time it takes for customs to clear something by 4 or 5 times, etc.
But it's a slow progress, though, nonetheless. The Russian president, Vladimir Putin, he said that he wants Russia to be one of the top 20 countries when it comes to the ease of doing business. At the moment, according to the World Bank's measure of ease of doing business, Russia is in 112th place, I believe. There's a long way to go still.
Yeah, and we discussed, and we believe that Russia will be moving very much up in the index. And I'll give you a couple of figures that many people don't know about Russia. So, for example, nominal GDP per capita grew 10 times in Russia in the last 12 years. It's one of the fastest growths out of any countries in the world. Russian stock market was valued at only $40 billion 12 years ago, and now it's valued at close to $1 trillion. Inflation in Russia was 36%, it's now 6.6%.
So
actually, if you look at
focus on the numbers,
focus on the numbers, look at the numbers. We even have this brochure, Russia equals growth, where we talk about specific numbers, because macroeconomic numbers for Russia look very attractive right now, and that is one of our messages.
Now, the Russian government also says that it wants to diversify the Russian economy, because at the moment it's still very much dependent on oil and on gas. And the World Economic Forum is also warning that the Russian economy could be adversely hit if the global energy market changes with, for instance, shale oil and shale gas. There is still a long way to go, though, when it comes to the diversification issue.
Yeah, and this morning we were discussing Russia needs a second leg, because right now oil is one leg that it really stands on. It needs a second leg, and the second leg could be technology, it could be export-oriented enterprises. We have invested in the largest network of health clinics for children in Russia that are growing very well. So we are very much focused on investing in diversified sectors, in technology sectors, and many investors are interested in this as well. When Kuwait Investment Authority decided to invest with us, they were specifically interested in diversifying away from oil and making sure we invest in different sectors that are growing quite fast in Russia.
How long is that? How long is it going to take to grow that second leg?
We believe it may take 5 to 7 years, because it's not a process that is taken overnight. But very clearly, government understands that this is a priority and makes lots of actionable steps in that regard.
Now, Russia has become a member of the World Trade Organization. How will that impact your work and investment into Russia?
Well, we believe it's a very positive sign, because there is going to be increased pressure on Russia to become more competitive. And joining World Trade Organization is a very important step for Russia to spur long-term growth. So we are very positive on that development. And as you know, Russia is going to be leading G20 in this year. And one of the very important items on the agenda is the world growth and economy growth. So we believe that joining WTO is a very important step. We also believe that increasing free flow of investments and not just trade is very important. So we're actually working with some key investors in France, with Caisse de dépôt, to think about joint investment between Russia and France as also one of the ways to integrate Russia into the European investment landscape and to have France also benefit from the growth in Russia.
What are your hopes for the G20 presidency? How will that change the state of things?
We believe it's a unique opportunity to really raise questions about growth, raise questions about better cooperation between different countries. I chair a group in B20, which is business part of G20, on investment and infrastructure. And we see it as a huge opportunity to talk, for example, about how to make infrastructure investments much more effective. Because right now there will be about $50 trillion of infrastructure money spent by countries in the next 50 years. So if it's effective by more than 10%, that means lots of savings for different countries. So I think G20 is going to be about growth, about working together, and about making sure that different countries can co-invest together.
Now, you say that two sectors in particular are very interesting for you, infrastructure and the consumption sector, as the Russian middle class has grown in the past few years or so. If we look closer at the consumption sector and what Russians are consuming at the moment, what kind of goods will they be shopping up? What kind of sectors within the consumption sector should we be keeping an eye on?
Well, agriculture is growing dramatically because people are consuming more high value added products. We invested in cinema theaters, and that have seen tremendous boom going forward. Healthcare is a huge market because people can now start paying for their own products. You know, all sorts of consumer good products are being sold in much higher volumes in Russia. Such things as soft drinks and a bunch of other retail products. Retail is growing quite well. So all those sectors, and just imagine, middle class tripled in the last 5 years. So many more consumers can buy many more products, including French products as well.
Do you think that the middle class will keep on growing in the same at the same rate that we have seen in the past few years?
Well, we believe the growth is going to continue. IMF forecasts Russia will grow from $2 trillion economy to a $3 trillion economy in the next 5 years. Middle class is about 30% of the Russian households. We believe that in 5 years it will be about 55 to 60% of the households. And that's very important for the quality of life in Russia and for the social sort of cohesion of Russia.
We don't have a lot of time left, but I just want to gauge your opinion on where Davos as an event is heading this year. What do you make of the mood this year? There's lots of talk about how the global economy is perhaps a little bit hesitant. We're not really sure where the future growth is going to come from.
Yeah, I totally agree with your assessment. I think this is really sort of a break point for the world economy, because previous Davos was, very bad mood. People were thinking about all sorts of problems. Now there are some signs of improvement, and the key is how do you continue this momentum going forward? And also, how do you take lessons from the past, which require actual countries to cooperate much more, have joint supervision of banks, have joint supervision of different investment vehicles. How do you really push this forward? So I think the idea is, how do you make sure the stability we are seeing right now, is it's a very sort of cautious stability, very delicate stability. How is it solidified and really moved forward?
So we are starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, but the tunnel is still long, basically.
Yes, and we hope that the light doesn't disappear in the next year or so.
Let's indeed hope so. Kirill Dmitriev, thank you very much indeed. Thanks very much indeed,
Markus.
for
Appreciate it.
taking the time to speak to us. And with that, we're going to wrap up this program from Davos. On behalf of the rest of the team, thanks for watching.